Ohioans who celebrated passage of the state constitutional amendment guaranteeing women reproductive health care, including access to abortion, have learned an important political lesson. The Caveman Caucus, made up of Republican lawmakers in Columbus who don't believe women are capable of making decisions about their own bodies, aren't swayed by the voters. Consider this response from Ohio House Speaker Jason Stephens, a Lawrence County Republican, after the complete but unofficial vote tally showed that over 2.1 million Ohioans said yes to Issue 1, the constitutional amendment, while only about 1.6 million said no. As a 100% pro-life conservative, I remain steadfastly committed to protecting life, and that commitment is unwavering. The legislature has multiple paths that we will explore to continue to protect innocent life. And Senate President Matt Huffman, an Allen County Republican, had this ominous warning. This isn't the end. It's really just the beginning of a revolving door of ballot campaigns to repeal or replace Issue 1. Those comments stand in stark contrast to what Lauren Blovelt, co-chair of Ohioans United for Reproductive Rights, told a cheering crowd of supporters election night, November 7th. The future is bright, and tonight we can celebrate this win for bodily autonomy and reproductive rights. I'm Cynthia Rickard, co-host of the Scribbler podcast and veteran journalist who retired as an editor of the now-closed Youngstown Vindicator, where I worked for 41 years. I, along with my Vindicator colleague, Bertram de Souza, the paper's retired editorial page editor and longtime Sunday columnist, and this podcast's founder, will delve into the future of the reproductive health issue with two guests, Dr. Alexis Smith of the Steel Valley Reproductive Freedom Coalition, Ohio Physicians for Reproductive Rights, and Ohioans United for Reproductive Rights, and Leo Jennings, political strategist employed by Ohio Physicians for Reproductive Rights, the group that formulated the amendment and led the statewide campaign for Issue 1.
Thank you, Alexis, again for participating in the Scribbler podcast. And Leo, good to see you again. It's been quite a while. Let me start with you, Alexis. 3 days after the election, you sent out an email with the headline, quote, "We did it," with 3 exclamation points. And here's what you wrote in part about passage of Issue 1. Quote, "This win was a collective effort of people across the Mahoning Valley and the state of Ohio that no one person can claim as theirs. We worked together and we won together." But isn't it a bittersweet victory given what the Republican lawmakers are promising to do?
I'm of the feeling that I don't like anybody to take our joy out of this, and when we get a win or when we accomplish something, I don't let that be taken away from us. I give us a moment to enjoy that and to celebrate that and to say that we worked hard to get to this. We did. We could have lost that election, it could have gone the other way. So for me, is that bittersweet in ways? I guess slightly, but I also kind of knew that this was coming. I mean, I'm interested to hear what Leo says about it, but I mean, I didn't think after all of the roadblocks that they put up in front of us that it was going to be that simple. But I also think that when you're doing something like this, you really do have to celebrate when you do win, and you have to take the time to appreciate and be grateful for the times when things go your way, or when you get, when this was momentous. I mean, I had people calling me from Colorado and Washington, D.C., and I mean, people all over the country were rooting for us in this endeavor, and we won, and I'm not going to let them take that away from us. So we just have to keep our eyes out and continue fighting as we need to maintain the reproductive freedom for everybody in the state of Ohio.
So Leo, Alexis doesn't want anything to ruin, the feeling of goodwill and her victory. But you've been around Ohio politics a long time. You've been around politics a long time. Give us your assessment of not only what happened election night, but what the Republicans are now promising to do to unravel this whole thing.
Right. Well, as you noted, Bertram, I'm a pragmatist. I've been involved in this issue for the past 16 months. And the one thing we always knew is that when it passed, it would legalize abortion in Ohio up to 22 weeks. But all the trap laws, the need for transfer agreements, the 24-hour waiting period, the unnecessary sonograms, all of those things would remain in law. And that's one of the reasons why the opposition campaign was so ridiculous. But all of those issues are going to have to be litigated. I'm more concerned about the need to have 36 issues decided by the courts in Ohio than I am about the ridiculous statements that came from Matt Huffman or Jason Stevens or Jennifer Gross in the wake of this, because they can woof all they want to, but the real challenge now, and that's why the victory, which was, believe me, incredibly sweet, and I was fortunate enough to be in Columbus on election night, incredibly sweet and incredibly momentous, is step one, and what will probably be 4 or 5 years worth of litigation. But the most important thing to note is that people will now have access to abortion in Ohio, abortion care, reproductive health care in Ohio, and there is nothing that the Republicans can do about that. Overcoming some of the obstacles they've put in the way over the last 10 to 15 years, that's going to be a struggle. And so I think it's important for everybody to realize that they need to stay engaged in this very important fight for not just the near future, but for the long term.
Leo, you don't think that any effort by the Republicans could actually put the results of the election on hold?
No, they can't. Well, they can't do anything about the fact that that abortion is now legal up to the point of viability in the state. It's clearly a constitutional mandate now, thanks to the overwhelming support for issue one. What they can do is, and what they will do, obviously, is refuse to roll back any of the trap laws, any of the laws that make it difficult for people to access services. And I don't put it past them to continue to pass laws like that, because part of their strategy and what they know is they pass a law that they know is clearly unconstitutional, but it forces litigation, which the Planned Parenthoods and ACLUs and Ohio Physicians for Reproductive Rights would then have to litigate, and that's very expensive, while the state has unlimited resources to fight those suits in court. So, they can continue to do that for the foreseeable future, and so that's a real challenge. But I don't think any of the things that they're talking about right now can or will undermine the basic right that we've established. That we've established in the state of Ohio.
And Alexis, there were numerous groups that came together, grassroots groups and other organizations that came together to push for passage of State Issue 1. And you belong to several of them and were very vocal. When this passed on election night, and there was a lot of celebration and all of that, did you, who has been involved in this a long time, believe that, red state Ohio, a majority of people in red state Ohio had spoken clearly, and therefore, was sending a clear message to legislators and others who are opposed to a woman's right to choose? Is that what you felt the message was on election night?
I think that this state, well, number one, I don't think Ohio's red. I think Ohio's been gerrymandered to look red. I think that's a misnomer to begin with. Okay. I think it's more of a 50-50 split. But when I got involved in this, Leo and the groups that were working with Ohio Physicians for Reproductive Rights had already been doing research on this. And they had always said that, you know, the 58% number, 59% number of support for this. So I just kept that in the back of my head this whole time. I knew that we were going to peel off some Republicans. I have, you know, I have acquaintances and friends who I know who are Republican, who are very much pro reproductive freedom and choice. And so I knew that we were the majority, and really we just had to allow people to give them the cover to go in and press the button and vote for us. That's really what we were doing. I don't need you to be out there yelling about this issue, but I need you to go in there and vote for it. And I knew that if we could just give them that cover to do that.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by giving them the cover?
Well, you know, people aren't very vocal about this issue necessarily. You're not going to see signs out in their yards. They're not going to come out in the public and say it. We were those people who were standing up and talking about it. But I had a lot of people coming and whispering in my ear and telling me that they were supporting, and they were in the background trying to help in any way they could. But for whatever reason, they could not be vocal about it publicly. And that's fine. I don't need everybody to be like that, you know, because I understand it's a contentious issue and there's concerns for safety. Mm-hmm. There truly are. And especially if you're going against your religion or whatever other institution that you may be dealing with. Again, I just needed people to go in and vote for issue 1. I didn't need them to come out and be this vocal advocate, but I knew that number in the back of my head. And I think that really helped me too, as people, because people around me were getting nervous by the campaign that was being run by our opponents, thinking that they were winning. And I just kept thinking in the back of my head that number. We just got to get those people there to vote.
And let me read this quote from Senate President Matt Hoffman after the passage. And he said, quote, "This isn't the end. It is really just the beginning of a revolving door of ballot campaigns to repeal or replace issue 1. How seriously, Leo, are you and the organization that you represent and other, you know, proponents of a woman's right to choose, how seriously are you taking that?
Well, I didn't take it very seriously when he said it, and he's backed away from it already. The governor has said that he doesn't support placing another issue on a ballot. Speaker of the House doesn't support placing another issue on a ballot. The Attorney General has said that, you know, the initiative process and doesn't exist to be used when the leaders of the state disagree with the people. That's an abuse of the initiative right, the right to amend the Constitution. So I don't take any of it seriously anymore as it relates to trying to undo the amendment itself. What I do take seriously, though, is their threat to continue to pass legislation that restricts access, and then to force us to litigate those laws, which could, you know, that litigation is very expensive and could take years. I mean, there are a series, and Alexis knows this, there's a whole series of laws that exist that to restrict access, that if this state were not so gerrymandered and so under control of the Republican Party, you know, we'd follow Michigan's lead, and there'd already be, you know, legislation to repeal those laws that would actually have a chance of passing. But because of the makeup of the legislature and the fact that the Republican majorities in the House and Senate are not accountable to the people in any way, shape, or form, you know, this is going to be a real boom for constitutional lawyers on both sides of the issue, because there are going to be tens of millions of dollars worth of litigation over the next 4 or 5 years.
Alexis, I'm wondering if you can kind of give a status report on the clinics in Ohio since its passage compared to what it was before, those clinics that do provide abortion services.
As far as I've heard, I mean, I think, of course, Leo could probably speak to this a little bit better than me. I mean, the remaining clinics that are open are, I'm certain, happy of this passage. But again, those trap laws exist. So, that's
How
where
many
we
are
got.
there? Do you know how many there are remaining in Ohio?
Is there 2 or 3?
No, there's abortion clinics in
Yeah.
Ohio? 8.
Oh, there's 8.
8.
There are 8. There are
Yeah.
there's 2 or 3 that actually perform surgical abortions.
That's what it is.
But there are 8 that provide mifepristone, the medication abortion. But I think what you'll see now that the right to access care up to 22 weeks has been passed, I think you'll start to see some more clinics open. When from just a commercial standpoint, when you had to worry about whether or not you were going to have a 6-week ban or a total ban, that's a disincentive for physicians to provide the needed care. Now that that's off the table, I think we'll probably see an expansion in the number of clinics, maybe to some place like the Mahoning Valley, where people are really forced to travel a long way to obtain the care they need. And we may see some clinics open in places in the state right now that are underserved.
So does the amendment secure the safety of the abortion drugs that the right has been railing against?
Well, that's going on nationally right now. There is that case against mifepristone that's a federal level, and that could have catastrophic consequences well beyond even this subject, because that drug has been used for 20 or 30 years under FDA approval. And if for some reason that would be shot down by the courts, I think it's in Texas, that could cause major issues for any drug that's honestly on the market, right? Because of FDA approval. Then you're questioning the FDA's approval capabilities for any drug, let alone just mifepristone. So I don't know that that's protected because that's a federal law that they're talking about, and we're talking about on the state level here. That I've been keeping my eye on that as well, because that could really affect healthcare, medicine, physicians in general, if they were to rule against the drug.
Okay.
As long as the drug regimen that's used for medication abortion remains legal in the United States, then the amendment protects physicians' rights to prescribe it.
Okay.
But if the Texas case, which is headed for the Supreme Court, if the Supreme Court would rule that FDA approval was in error and take that drug off the market, there's nothing that the amendment would do to protect Ohio's ability to prescribe that drug. That's a federal case. It's the approval of the drug was by the FDA. So as long as it remains available on the federal level, the amendment protects physicians' rights to prescribe it. But still, with the 2-day, you have to have a 24-hour waiting period. All the ridiculous laws that were passed to try to restrict access will remain in effect. But the drug will remain available as long as it's approved by the FDA.
If that
That's what I was
Go
sorry.
ahead. No,
That's
go
what I
ahead.
was going to say too about the trap laws you were talking about, Leo, because people may want to open a clinic, but as long as some of those laws are on the books too, that is also a barrier to them opening a clinic here. Because again, if you have to have the capability of admitting a patient into the hospital or all of these extra regulations on you, even if the right is protected, it's still a barrier to opening a clinic and having the capability of running it and staying afloat, right?
You're absolutely right. The trap laws are a disincentive, and they were passed for that reason.
Yeah.
And so,
Go ahead.
Given the makeup of the Ohio General Assembly now, the fact that the Republicans have a supermajority, veto-proof majority, And a lot of them, most of them come from safe districts because of the way they gerrymandered, that all they have to care about is the primary. There is no general election. What is your next step as far as your strategy goes to ensure that what was passed at the general election with issue 1 is not upended or barriers are not put up? What kind of strategy are you considering or can you adopt to sort of change the makeup of the General Assembly?
Well, aside from the litigation, which we've discussed, the most important thing that can be done to ensure access to reproductive health care and abortion in the state of Ohio is to pass the redistricting amendment
right.
that former Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor is now championing. Until we have legislators that are actually accountable to their constituents, they will continue to ignore the will of the people to the greatest extent possible. And so, from my standpoint, looking at this in the long term and how we guarantee the access to reproductive health care that was our goal in putting this amendment on a ballot and passing it, unless we change the way that the legislative lines are drawn and hold these people and have a system in which these people can be held accountable, we're going to struggle for years to ensure that people have access. I mean, that's the key.
Yeah. We're already gearing up for it, honestly. There's already been discussions about collecting signatures again. We collected signatures in 2017 through the League of Women Voters for the initial gerrymandering ballot initiative, which we thought was going to end this. So that is a little bit, upsetting. But yeah, there's already discussion and talk of the supporters of this issue turning towards that to collect signatures and help get that initiative passed as well.
Alexis, I have 2 questions. Is there an alternative to mifepristone if it's outlawed?
That's a good question. Are there other drugs that can cause an abortion? There are, but they're not necessarily safe for that use regularly. I would have to go back and honestly look. I know there are drugs that can end pregnancies, but that safely do it and could do it on a consistent enough basis that it would be adequate. I'm not sure that exists at this time.
And my second question is wondering, we talked a lot about doctors possibly leaving Ohio because of this potential ban. I'm just wondering what kind of feedback you're getting from doctors now locally and across the state.
I mean, everybody I've spoken to is on our side. So I think everybody was very excited about it. And I think we're very, kind of amped up seeing what our collective power could do, that we have a voice and we used it and we were able to create a positive change in the state. So I think in general right now, most of the people I've been in contact with are very happy with this and feel like it's a good thing for the state in general and for healthcare in the state. But I don't really talk to the other side very much, I will admit to that.
No, I was just wondering if, because some doctors were talking about not practicing in Ohio because of this, have you heard from any who have changed their mind about leaving the state or coming back to the state?
I think it's too quick now, again, with the idea of the state house, Republicans in the state house saying some of these things are kind of scaring people still. No matter, we know that they're blustering and that this is an amendment and it's going to be hard for them to really do anything. But, we are cognizant also of the trap laws. I mean, I've known that's been going on all over the country for years and years to limit access. So I think there's just a general timidness about healthcare at this point in time, especially after the pandemic. a lot of healthcare is really in grave danger at this point in time, is really hanging by a string. So this was a great win, but it's one of many other issues that are going on within healthcare right now that are feeding into these issues. People are leaving healthcare in droves right now. They just really are.
All these decisions being made by non-medical professionals.
Well, in the pandemic, I mean, who wants to sign up for that? Oh, I might, get myself killed, or my family, hurt my family. And just the burnout of working and working and working.
You mean because of the vaccination controversy?
No, we had more people really leave because they got worked so hard during all of this. And so you had a lot of the people who were about to retire just say, I'm done, I'm leaving. And so that left a much smaller group of us. Our generation is not big enough. It's not as big as the baby boomer generation. Yeah. So we always knew there was going to be a lack of doctors, nurses, all kinds of healthcare workers, come in the coming years. We knew that was coming. The pandemic just hastened that because people who could get out left, So healthcare is, it's struggling right now. It really is. But this was a win, and it was a positive, and I think that can only mean good things for healthcare in our state as far as getting and keeping doctors here when you center them more in the doctor-patient relationship and their capability of working with all of the tools that they have.
Just to touch on it from the perspective of Ohio Physicians for Reproductive Rights, which is the group that I've been working with since last July. It's comprised of 4,000 doctors and healthcare professionals, and one of the reasons that the group formed was because immediately after the Dobbs decision and the imposition of a 6-week ban, doctors were seeing the unbelievable consequences of that. Women being denied care, a 10-year-old girl being forced to leave the state, a 10-year-old girl who had been raped and impregnated, forced to leave the state to obtain the care she needed, women being turned away from emergency rooms. And then from the standpoint of medical education, the specter of a 6-week ban or a total ban meant that prospective doctors would not be able to receive the complete reproductive health care training that they needed. And so that was why you saw a lot of medical students come together and say that the amendment absolutely had to pass. That dynamic has changed now because the amendment has passed. Training will be available. Women who need an abortion or who need reproductive care at up to 22 weeks are going to be able to obtain that care. Doctors are not going to be faced with the decision of, do I put my Hippocratic oath and my obligation to care for my patient above the fact that I may be charged with a felony for providing that care? And that's one of the things that people tend not to focus on, is the fact that 6-week ban, if you violated it, and you were a physician, you were subject to a 5th-degree felony and possible loss of your license. And so all of that disappeared, thankfully, on November 7th. And I think that will benefit the entire state of Ohio by ensuring that we can attract and retain the best and the brightest medical talent in the country.
So let me ask this question to both of you, and Alexis, you can go first. The outcome of the election and the vote. I'm sure I'm sure Leo has already done it, but I have a feeling you have as well. When you look at the vote and you look at where this passed and what kind of support it got throughout Ohio, what do you glean from that as far as where the state is right now? Or is this issue a one-off where you have people who voted for issue 1 who'll turn around in 2024 and vote for Donald Trump? Well, give give us your analysis of this vote. Alexis, you can go first, and then I'm sure Leo will have a lot to say about it.
Well, I mean, and every election since Roe was overturned, abortion has won, right? You know, it's this issue is a major issue to voters, and it's driving people to the polls. People want their reproductive freedom. I don't think that's a one-off. A lot of us were devastated when Roe was overturned, and we're not soon to forget that, what happened, that our freedom and our rights are at stake here. So I don't think it was a one-off. Do I think that guarantees a presidential vote? No, I don't think that, but I do think that there is this issue is galvanizing, and it is important to people, and they will come out to vote for it. In fact, they did in 2 elections this year.
Right.
I have the matching yes on one, no on one buttons to prove it, and all of the literature. But I don't think that's a one-off. I think there is an opportunity here to use that support and that groundswell of grassroots activity towards other things. But I don't know that that guarantees that, you know, Biden or Trump is going to win in 2024.
And Leo, let me add to that question, providing your analysis. There were those who suggested that rather than do it this year, wait till next year, because it was such a galvanizing issue. So explain the thinking and what you gleaned from the results. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's, and this is something that hasn't been discussed enough from my perspective, is that Ohio Physicians for Reproductive Rights, the group of doctors who initiated this, when we started talking about what to do and when to do it, they're physicians. They care about people's lives. They care about people's health care. And so Ohio was the one state in the nation that could put this on the ballot in 2023. And our view was we would be putting people's lives and health needlessly at risk if we allowed the political consideration of waiting until 2024 to outweigh the healthcare consideration. We can now start, people will now have access to reproductive health care and abortion services at the beginning of December of 2023. Had we waited a year, there would have been all of next year when people would have been been denied access. Because let's not fool ourselves for a moment. If this had failed, the Ohio Supreme Court would have already put the 6-week ban back into effect. And so from OPRR's standpoint, our goal was always to do this as soon as possible so we could save people's lives and protect people's health. The political consideration of waiting until 2024, we never for a moment ascribed to that. Our goal was always to establish this right and restore the rights guaranteed by Roe as soon as possible, because people's lives and health were at risk, as we saw in the 82 days when the 6-week ban was in effect. We could not in good conscience allow that to happen or delay addressing that horrible situation.
And what do you glean from the vote after you've looked at and analyzed and studied the numbers?
Well, what I gleaned from it is that Ohio's like the 6 other states that, where voters work to protect the right to abortion and reproductive health care, in that, and you can see this, the dramatic shift in the polls before Roe was erased and after Roe was erased. It was a 50-50 issue as long as Roe was protected, that all of a sudden became a 60-40 issue as soon as people understood that I may be opposed to abortion, but man, if I need one, I want to be able to get one.
Right.
And that has been consistent, in every state. And the issue here polled at 59 to 60% from the first time we did a poll all the way through election day. The people want to have their rights. They want to protect their rights. They want to protect the doctor-patient relationship and be able to receive the health care that they need. When Roe was in effect, it was easy for some people to say, I'm opposed to abortion, because they knew if they needed one, they could get one. I think it helped Sherrod Brown. I think it helped Sherrod immensely, because it's energized people, and his opponents, potential opponents, were all opposed to this. I don't know how much of an effect it has on the presidential race, and given the fact that these districts are so gerrymandered, I don't think it has much of an impact on the state legislative or the congressional races.
Leo, after an election, you and others usually dissect the vote as to what counties it passed in, how much it passed by. Did you do anything similar for this vote?
Sure, we've taken a look at it, and the major newspapers and the political pundits in the country have looked at it, and the issue passed in 18 counties that voted for Trump in 2020. And again, I think that relates to people's personal feelings, that they want to have control over their health care and their lives. And being anti-government is part of Trump's appeal. And so in a way, the issue one played into that. I don't want government telling me what I can and cannot do for my family and in consultation with my physician. So there were 18 Trump counties that voted for issue one and voted for it by a healthy margin in almost all of them. The question is, does that affect Trump's vote in those counties? And I tend to believe that it won't. Again, I think the one race where it may have some impact is on Sherrod's race.
And Alexis, we had talked about this before the election, and that is the involvement of the Catholic Church in this election. And I, being a Catholic, it added to my resentment of my church. But beyond that, the three bishops of Cincinnati, Columbus, and Cleveland, who put up, more than $1.5 million to defeat this. They don't seem to be backing down, though, because after the election, the bishops put out another statement. And so when you were out there canvassing and campaigning, and I'm sure you talked to Catholics, and I'm sure you talked to Republicans, what were they telling you about the involvement, for example, of the church, and how were they dealing with it?
A lot of people were upset about it. A lot of people thought that they were out of step for what they were saying. They thought it was too far. There was a lot of, like you said, resentment, a lot of anger with the church sending it home in newsletters and preaching from the pulpits and things like that. We had various issues on election day with them. I don't think it's helping them keep the numbers of people that they think it is. I think it's driving people away. And I think that money that they use really could have been used to help living, breathing women and children who need the help. It's very hard to look at that and not think that they are out of step with their congregations and are just not really willing to listen. And when you don't see them helping out in the community as much as they went out and campaign against this, it really makes you question their motives. So I think everybody I spoke to that's, Catholic or sends their child to a Catholic school or is, still kind of Catholic, but maybe doesn't go to church much anymore, we're pretty upset about it.
Leo?
I'll just observe, Bertram, because I think this is important as a former altar boy, that I would have had a lot more respect for the church, and I think it's important to note that in all of these campaigns, the church has been one of the primary contributors to the anti-choice side. But I would have had a lot more respect for the church if they would have stood in the pulpit or sent out letters that said, we are morally opposed to abortion, period.
Yes.
And if you're Catholic, you should be morally opposed to abortion, instead of lying through their teeth repeatedly and continually misrepresenting what the amendment was about, what its impact would be, and what it would do. The claim that this would permit abortions at 9 months, which is elective, is totally false. I mean, all of the bishops and all of the priests should go to confession. But I would have had a lot more respect for the church if they had said, we are morally opposed to abortion. Yes. It's wrong, and that's why you shouldn't vote for it, rather than feeding in to the multi-million-dollar campaign of lies and disinformation that actually put doctors' lives at risk.
Yeah.
Well, and patients too. Imagine that. I mean, when you're spreading these medical misinformation, just like with vaccines or anything else, that harms people. These people, there are people out there who believe that information and will not seek the appropriate care they need. I agree with you, Leo. That was another thing that was very hard for me to swallow, was the medical lies and falsehoods about treatment, because again, this can harm or, actually, kill somebody. So, that really bothered me too. I agree with you. I would have been much more comfortable with them being like, oh, we're opposed to this because of our religion.
And in fact, that's what the Pope advised. He basically said the Catholic Church is opposed to abortion, but then he said priests and clergy should not become political and participate politically in the issue. And of course, the American Catholic Church hierarchy doesn't like the Pope, so they ignored him. We're coming to the end because Leo.
Go ahead. I have to apologize because I have to.
Yes, scoot. You have to leave. Let me give us some final words, Leo, before you leave, and then I want to give Alexis a chance to at least celebrate, because I took away her celebration at the beginning.
Yes, you did.
At the beginning of this, and I apologize. So, Leo, go ahead.
Well, I just, this fight, I started this back in May with a couple of State Representative Michelle Laporte and Senator Nikki Antonio, right after the leak of the Alito's decision in Dobbs. I said we need to introduce a constitutional amendment to protect and restore Roe, just so we had a conversation, and we had a conversation starter. Then the doctors at OPRR, who spontaneously organized after within 48 hours of the heartbeat bill going into effect and seeing the disastrous consequences, the work that physicians did, and physicians like Alexis and the people across the state did to come together and get this done and protect future generations of Ohioans, including my daughter. I have a 24-year-old daughter who was one of the motivating factors in this. I can't thank the people who did this enough for taking on a fight that at the beginning seemed to be actually unwinnable, and for achieving one of the greatest victories in the history of Ohio politics. So, Alexis, we met in January of 2023 when we were starting to collect signatures. You've been an invaluable asset and have helped make the state a better place. And the physicians who led this fight, everybody owes them a debt of gratitude. Bertram, I appreciate having the opportunity to come on and talk about it. And I'd like to do it again.
We will. And thank you for your time, Leo. So, Alexis,
thank you very much. I really appreciate being here.
No, Alexis, but let me give you a chance to go ahead and and at least gloat for a minute. So go ahead.
I'm not going to gloat. I'm not going to gloat. I don't, again, just along with what Leo said, I wanted to say to him, like, I am so grateful that they got me involved in this. Michelle Lepore Hagan approached me and told me about OPRR and said, you got to get in with this group and you got to get signed up. And then they pulled me in before the petition signature phase started. And we were meeting with Leo and everybody else. And it's just kind of gone on from there. And I'm so grateful to have been a part of this and to see this, come to fruition and see the groundswell of people who were committed to working for this. I can't gloat about it. I mean, we just won our rights back. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, part of it's like, this was already decided in the 1970s. Like, right. We have lived with this all of my life. I was born in 1981. I never knew a time without Roe. I bawled the day that it was overturned. I just cried and cried and cried. So to me, it's not gloating or it's not even celebrating as much as it's like a relief. Like, oh, I feel like a whole adult human being again who has their rights to control their own body. I mean, we didn't even, I don't think necessarily win anything. We just got back to where we were before. Yeah. So that was the scary thing, but it was very eye-opening. And to see that groundswell of people who were willing to act and to step out and to risk their safety and, whatever else, whether it's clout or whatever, influence they might have to speak up about this has really moved me. To see the men who've come out for it has really moved me. But, yeah, I mean, I feel a huge relief. I know our work isn't done, but.
I was just going to ask you about that. Are you planning to continue the fight to remove some of these restrictions that they've imposed?
Oh, yes. I mean, we're not going anywhere. I'm still with OPRR, Still Valley Reproductive Freedom Coalition, still going to be around working for reproductive freedom and justice for all. We're not leaving people. We don't think that it's that and it's done. We know better. And I think we know better now too. A lot of us got complacent, like Leo was saying. We thought because Roe was there, right, we were okay.
Yeah.
And now we know that that's just not true. And I think that's the difference now, is that we've really, it's come off our eyes. We've really woken up to this idea that there is no stopping. It's going to be from here on out. We'll need to take breaks, but we're going to have to keep working.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. We've had lots of discussions about this, and we appreciate the fact that you've been available to us. We'll have you on again. I'm sure we're going to be having other discussions. But again, great job, and it was a great victory on November the 7th.
Good to see you after victory. We thank Dr. Alexa Smith for again being so generous with her time, and Leo Jennings, a longtime political operative in the Mahoning Valley and the state of Ohio, for sharing their thoughts about what comes next for the highly emotional and very personal issue of women's reproductive health. Republicans in Ohio, aware that Donald Trump has changed the political landscape of this state, are emboldened by their supermajority in the General Assembly. They have shown little inclination to work with Democrats or listen to the wishes of the majority of the voters in this state. The GOP's clear denial of the right of women to choose what to do with their own bodies is indicative of its radical right-wing agenda and its dismissive attitude toward the will of the people. We thank Andy Kunkel for his excellent work as producer, technical director, and videographer for the Scribbler video podcast, which is streamed on YouTube, Facebook, and other digital platforms. Please hit the subscribe and share buttons on your screen. Till next time, I'm Cynthia Rickard. Thanks for spending your time with us.